Talking about the stages in meditation, we have immediately linguistic terminological problem. That when we talk about stages, we tend to think in terms of a staircase, that you walk the first step, then you go to the next step, and then after the next step, that numbers appeared in your elevator kiosks, that things were already defined, clarified already. But seem to be the problem here is not so much with that, of stages after stages, of quick steps that you take. Then having taken that particular step, you will advance yourself in upstairs. But we are talking here in terms of process. It is more likely the question of growing and aging process. That although we do celebrate our birthdays, that doesn't mean necessarily that you have suddenly become from being 2 years old to 3 years old. Night of your party, as soon as you blow your candle. That was just a hypothetical guesswork that you have become 3 years old by then. So there is a process of development takes place, which is precisely the question of meditation practice is concerned. It is not a particular stage, but it is a process that's taking place constantly. And such process can take place also accordance with your life situation. Traditionally, it was recommended to become a monk or nun. Leave your home family, relatives. Leave your province. Leave your village. And then join in to another home, which is called a monastery, and become one of the inmates of that particular establishment. But we have a problem here again, that if you left home and if you become inmate of a monastery, another monastery, you are re-establishing yourself as being at home. That has become a problem. That's become the chaotic situations, that you left home but you found another home. Conscience is very powerful there. In your conscience, that you feel you are in a better home because that particular home is divinely, enlighteningly proved home, sanctioned by the Buddhas or the God or whatever. So we have another problem there, and that becomes stage to stage, rather than the evolutionary process in spiritual development. Then we have the Indian tradition, Hindu tradition rather, that join as a young man and learn the craftsmanship of your particular trade and worshipping God simultaneously, being a young man and you practicing your craftsmanship and doing your pujas and everything at the same time. Evolving, developing, becoming more and more in contact with the reality or God. And finally, when you are ready to resign, that you get a divine pension, that you become a retired old person who is regarded as practically wise, spiritually wise person who then retire and follow your life, and you died in a state of spiritual ecstasy as you get old. There's so many disciplines that we know We'll talk in terms of stages and making a landmark on spirituality, that you take a certain particular vow, discipline from this point onward, that you are a different person. You have your bar mitzvah and you become a manhood or womanhood, and all kinds of things like that, which indicate very deceptively that the process is a sudden one. Once you get your title and a deed goes with your title, then you become a slightly advanced and different person. And from the point of view of true spirituality, that we have to face this problem of misunderstanding, that there is nothing is regarded as a sudden jump at all, that there is a gradual process after process taking place constantly, except in the Vajrayana tradition of Tantra, things work the opposite. But probably we could discuss that later on. But as long as the Mahayana and Hinayana process of spiritual path or style of spiritual path goes, that it's a gradual process. People talk about a sudden enlightenment, sudden glimpse, satori, and all kinds of other things. But even those need conditions for you to pull yourself together, that you are in a right frame of work, frame of mind, to experience such thing. So even so-called sudden enlightenment need preparation to be enough to be sudden. Otherwise you can't be sudden. That if you have a sudden accident in your motor car, you got to driving your car, otherwise you can't have an accident. So that's the basically whole point of that. Whatever we talk about in suddenness, a sudden flash of all kinds, we are talking in terms of conditional suddenness, conditional sudden enlightenment, which is dependent on slow growth of the spiritual process of commitment and of discipline and of experience, not only in the sitting practice alone, but we are also talking about a lifelong experience, dealing with your wife, your husband, your kids, your parents, your job, your money, your sex life, your aggressive life, whatever you have. That dealing with everything that we have and working with them and learning from those situations. So therefore the gradual process is almost inevitable. And almost at this point we could say quite safely, scholastically, experientially, we could say quite safely that there's no such thing as sudden enlightenment in the Buddhism at all. So-called sudden enlightenment is understanding which depends on the process that we have experienced already. So therefore it is called sudden. You could say that there is a suddenly I saw the sun rising, suddenly I saw the sunset, but that is dependent on the situation, and you are making more dramatic than necessary. Sun doesn't rise suddenly or set suddenly. And maybe you have noticed that's going to happen. That depends on your own experience of that. Point here is that there is a continuity in the spiritual journey, that you begin very solidly and you progress very solidly and you evolve yourself very solidly. So the things we are talking about, or we've been told of magical zap, so to speak, is a purely mythical one, ladies and gentlemen. And the zap cannot take place unless you are in that situation to be zapped, which makes automatically the zapping is a gradual process rather than sudden experience. So, at this point, what I'm trying to say here in the spiritual path generally is I'm saying that don't expect supernormal magic of any kind, anything. Some of you might have experienced that kind of magic, maybe so. And some of you have read about such magic does exist, used to exist, or did exist, does exist, will exist, whatever. But, however, magic doesn't exist. The magic depends on the magician, and the magician depends on the trainers of the magicians. So magic can't appear unless there's a magical situation. And no one can save us from state of chaos unless we understood what does mean by chaos and confusion. Unless we suffered from it. Otherwise, the chaos doesn't become chaos because we don't notice it. So once you begin to notice it, you're already on the path, that you begin to feel uncomfortable and nuisance, that something's bugging you constantly. You are already in the chaos, but you're already taking a slow journey. So the spiritual progress, the spiritual path, the development that we're talking at this point, is a gradual process. So-called sudden enlightenment is a purely definition in language and the concept rather than really something taking place. Spiritual journey. One of the fundamental important point that we should understand is that a journey, so-called journey we're making, the so-called spirituality we are talking about, fundamentally it is based on nothing to do with the spirit. And the spiritual is self-existing healthiness that every one of us possess. That we are not talking about the mythical concept of God, or we are not talking in terms of divine power that we can't understand, but we got to accept it. But we are talking about something that's very literal and real, that the spiritual journey can only take place if we begin to make ourselves available to the path to begin with. And such process takes place, such as like shamatha experience in the Hinayana level, slow process of mindfulness, which allows ourselves to be available to ourselves before we become missionaries or social workers, whatever you have. In the bodhisattva level or the tantric level, whatever we have, or conventional level, that we have to start, as we have discussed the other day, that we have to realize ourselves and to pull ourselves together, that the first step of being a social worker or preacher is make sure that we don't become nuisance to others, that we don't make nuisance to others. And that is the starting point, is that we don't make nuisance to others, is the shamatha practice of meditation, in which that we begin to catch ourselves being nuisance to ourselves. We find all kinds of thought problems, all kinds of emotional hang-ups, all kinds of physical sitting practices, problems of all kinds. And we are somewhat dubious to our technique that was given to us. And we are making nuisance to ourselves. Let alone not make nuisance to somebody else. So we are nuisance to ourselves. We get angry to ourselves by saying that I could do better than this. What's wrong with me? It seems I'm getting worse. I'm going backward. And you're angry at every world, all world, including yourself. That everything you see is an expression of insult. That the universe becomes expression of insult at once. And one has to relate with that to begin with. If you begin to exert your power and energy to the path, that one has to face that particular fact, that you're going to work with yourself. Having understood or realized that the first step is to make sure that you can make friends with yourself, is the motto of shamatha experience, is that you realize that you made a friend with yourself, that you have accepted, acknowledged, and you begin to work with subconscious gossip, fantasized dreams, and everything that you learn yourself, come back to the technique of awareness of the breathing, which has been taught by the Buddha. And then, having made friends with yourself, you begin to realize a sense of relief and a sense of excitement, but at the same time, one should be very careful not to get excited, overly excited, that there's still your schoolboy. If your homework, last night's homework is good, that doesn't mean to say you're out of the school altogether. You've got to come back to your class, you've got to work with your teacher, you've got to do more homework, because you are more successful, you're very good at, which demands more pressure and attention on you. And you are not quite yet to quit your school. You've got to come back, you've got to work. And the next process is what's known as Vipassana experience, which is a sense of awareness, fundamental awareness, which is to say that awareness which acknowledges the boundaries of non-awareness, boundaries of wandering mind, and begin to acknowledge that situation. And once you begin to realize the boundary that your awareness is taking place, and your mindless, your confusion is taking place, one begin to realize that. But however, you don't make a big deal about that particularly, but you accept the whole thing as part of the basic awareness, that not only you be aware of your breath, not only you be aware of your posture, your thought process, but you are fundamentally aware, fundamentally mindful and aware. In the basic, that there's some sense of totality is taking place, that you're aware of the room, you're aware of your rug, you're aware of your zafu, you're aware of what color of hair you have, and you're aware of what you did before you came to sitting practice, and you'll be constantly aware of those things. But then there is non-verbal awareness, non-conceptual awareness, which doesn't talk terms or doesn't relate with the terms of facts and figures. What time you came here and said meditate, but you have a basic, general, abstract level of awareness, that being, sense of being, and sense of this is taking place. In fact, something's happening right here. Sense of being, sense of experience without word, without terms, without a concept, without a verbalization or without visualization, but sense of being is taking place. And that is unnameable. And we can't call it consciousness exactly. Whereas if you are conscious, you begin to relate with the inputs, how much you're getting in, how much you're not able to get in. We can't even call it awareness, which is sometimes a misunderstanding. That is not quite awareness, it's a state of being. Being what? One never knows. It's just being without anything. Are you being Jack? Are you being Jill? Are you being Smith? One never knows. But it's not as vague as that, but within the state of vagueness, of uncertainty, there is a very strong energy, very powerful. Something is taking place, something's happening. There's a shock, there's electricness of pulled back in the presence constantly. Here, here, here. It's happening. It's really taking place. So it's not as vague as we expected, but actually it's happening. Which is a very interesting dichotomy there, that on the other hand, not knowing what it is all about, but on the other hand, there's enormous precision and understanding. Very directness is taking place, which is a state of vipassana, state of realization in terms of insight, that you begin to see inside of your mind in the level of non-verbal awareness. Non-verbal cognitive mind is functioning, which is the state of vipassana, is non-verbal cognitive mind is functioning. It is non-verbal, non-conceptual, because you can't say, I now hear the traffic, I now hear the cuckoo clock, or I now hear my wristwatch is clicking, I now hear my wife is yelling at me. But I hear, but I don't hear at the same time. This totality is taking place with a very precise something or other is happening. That it is very electric, but on the other hand, it's not particular ecstasy. No, it is state of dullness, but state of here-ness is taking place, which is described in the Tibetan Buddhist literatures is now-ness. Now-ness. Sometimes that state is referred as the fourth moment. That sounds maybe more mystical than what it meant. The fourth moment is being, you have past, present, and future are three moments. Then you have something else taking place, which is called a fourth moment. And the fourth moment is not particularly far-out experience or extraordinary as such, but it is a state of that such experience doesn't belong to now even, or that at all, or it doesn't belong to my be experience, but it belongs to non-category, which provides another sense of category. That's why it is called the fourth moment. That is the state of vipassana, or the state of non-ego. In Tibetan term, it's called Laktong Dhammitok Vishirap, which means that the knowledge of egoless and insight. It's a very real experience that nothing can be misunderstood by this, that it is so overwhelming experience that the experience coming at you, in fact, at some point, once you have a sense of perspective experience coming at you, you are experiencing it precisely in great detail. And from that point of view, then you are able to work with yourself, your life situation, your everyday life situations, because that there is a constant reminders taking place in everyday life. All kinds of little hassles. You forgot to pay the telephone bill. And the message from the bell company is becoming heavier and heavier. Just about to see you. That our motorcycle is just about to catch fire because you're overextending its power. That your grandmother is dying. There is a further need for commitment, family heritage, parental relationships calling for your attention that you can't afford to forget. All kinds of past reminders and present reminders happening at once. There is a state of turmoil, problematic situations happening constantly. But if you look at it closely, where the problem came from, what is all this about? You begin to experience the fourth moment. That problem comes and problem goes, but still remains problematic. That is the state of fourth moment, is that a problem remains as a problem, that nothing dissolves into a lovely, lighty, beautiful, creamy, honey, lotus lake. And it remains still potent, slightly painful, sour, as if the world, the universe is staring at you. The world is looking at you with a disapproving look. that you haven't been quite good or enlightened as you should be. Some disapproval look that the world does. When the sun shines, it looks at you. When the cock cries, crock-a-doodle-doo, it says same thing. When the motor car horns outside your house, it says the same thing. When your telephone rings, it says the same thing. There's ironic mockeries taking place all over the place. It's not that the devil is against you and therefore trying to destroy you, or some magicians have put spell on you, therefore they can't get at you. But the world is constantly, very powerfully, in its very subtle way, trying to remind you that you should remember your fourth moment. The fourth moment. That's what's happening. In the level of Vipassana experience, that experience becomes very real, very precise, and it transcends even reference work on the reference point on a doctrine that you are practicing Buddhism, you're practicing Hinduism, but you're practicing life. And in fact, ironically, you begin to find that you can't escape, and life is practicing you. And it becomes very real and very obvious. And that is a very, very important starting point or state of processing, evolving oneself, that you begin to realize that you are on the path, that everything what happens in your life is to begin to haunt you. Sometimes the haunting process takes pleasurable confirmation, and sometimes painful, threatening of all kinds. That there is some kind of a ghost is haunting you all the time, which you can't get rid of. You can't even call the Catholics to exercise. State of insight, fourth moment, experience, as well as state of being haunted, taking place simultaneously. That's an interesting place to be, that you might feel that you are sitting and camping on a razor's edge, making campfires quite happily, but knowing that you are on the razor's edge, that you can't quite settle down and relax and build your campfire, but one still does it. And that state of hauntedness is a state of ego, actually. That there's somebody in your family, in your part of the being, is to begin to complain you that somebody's getting uncomfortable messages. In other words, that state of awareness of fourth moment that we talked about in the Vipassana experience cannot be materialized unless that there is a slight tinge of being haunted by your own ego. The hauntedness and the sense of insight both work together, which builds the experience. Experience cannot be happening unless there is a black and white taking place, a sweet and a sour working together. Otherwise, it becomes no experience. You're just absorbed into the sweet, or you're just absorbed into the sour. So you have no way of working at all. So, on the whole, that we should regard our practice and experience on the path is experiential rather than stages on the path, that now you're on that particular program, and now next thing you're on another kind of program, and on July the 4th that you decide to change your program into something else. September the 2nd you're now on to something else. You go to the first booming or the second booming. You're on the Vipassana training now on July the 10th. You're going to be on the Vipassana training. And somehow things doesn't work that way. And a lot of teachers try to institute such techniques and failed. A lot of students trying to put themselves so that they know where they're at, so to speak, as we usually say. And they also failed. So we have no way of knowing where we are, how we're going, as far as computerized demand is concerned. But we know we are on some journey. That journey takes place, that journey takes time and experience. So the experience, when we talk about, we should be very careful on that term, experience. What you experience, what you're experiencing. Experience, traditionally speaking, works that you have an idea and expectation. You have some kind of pre-warning as to idea might be. Somebody told you and you might know roughly, and you prepare for it. This particular experience might come to you, and then you wait for it. You do as better as you could. You exert yourself, and then you have the experience. Everything's absolutely predictable. But when we're talking about this case and experience is concerned, we are not talking about a programmed, predicted experience as such. We are talking purely in terms of experience which come from the unconscious mind, that you begin to feel like if you have a cold shower and suddenly it's turning into hot, burning water coming out of it. It's so instant, it's so real. For a moment, when you have the hot water coming at you, you still think it's cold. Then you begin to feel something is not quite right with that particular coldness. It begins to burn you. It's unprogrammed experience. It's like that. Nothing is a particular experience in terms of expectations, but it's like turning hot water and cold water simultaneously experiencing in a certain individuality. Maybe we could stop there and have discussion.
Could you please explain the difference between the present and the fourth moment?
Present is the third moment that you are being there. Like when we talk about I could feel your presence. You could feel the presence of that light being switched on. Now there's no darkness. It is some sense of security of some kind, that you know where you are, that you keep your flashlight in your pocket if you run into darkness. and suddenly you take it out and flash it where you're going. You feel enormous relief created by that little spot of light that it created in front of you, although you don't see the whole thing, but you feel the sense of presence, present, of existence, of having flashlight and lit and able to see where you're at, where you're going about. And the fourth moment seemed to be a state of totality in some sense, that there is a basic awareness taking place which doesn't need particular reassurance as such, but it's happening. It's there that you feel the totality. You not only see the flashlight beam, but you see the space around you at the same time. It's a much larger version of the third moment.